Hi everybody, I'm KHOU 11 meteorologist Pat Calvin here from Houston, Texas with an update on the tropics, specifically an update on what's going on with Tropical Storm Milton as of Saturday evening. Still a tropical storm, fairly weak, winds only sustained around 40 miles per hour, and it is stationary as well, or basically stationary, only drifting to the northeast at walking pace, about 3 miles per hour. This storm, though, is going to take off as we go through the next few days. Here's the forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Notice by Monday morning, so Sunday night into early Monday morning, the National Hurricane Center forecasts this to become a Category 1 storm. So we go from a 40 mile per hour tropical storm this evening to a Cat 1 hurricane in about 36 hours. And then from there, the intensification really starts to ramp up. We go from a Cat 1 storm Monday morning to a Category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane in the southern Gulf of Mexico by Tuesday afternoon. Now from there, a lot of questions remain. Where does the storm go within this forecast cone? And also, does it hang on to that strength? Does it intensify more, or does it start to weaken? There's a lot of factors at play with how this storm evolves. But a hint as to what's happening is watch how the day parts become a little more spaced. So between Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday afternoon, there's this big jump here. That is because the jet stream will start to interact with this storm, and so the forward motion starts to increase, but you also may see some more shear with the storm as it approaches the Florida coast, which may help to dampen the strengthening and the intensity of the storm as it gets closer. But as of right now, pretty much every computer forecast model that is out there brings this thing into the west coast of Florida as an intense Category 3 hurricane, if not even stronger. So this is the bottom line. If you live anywhere from the Big Bend coast of Florida down towards the Everglades, deep into southwest Florida here towards Marco Island and Naples, you got to be watching this very carefully. This is an unusual track. In fact, there's only been one hurricane on history in record going all the way back to the 1800s that has taken this journey from the Bay of Campeche to the west coast of Florida, and that was 1888, before most of these places were even developed, especially developed to the way they are right now. And the last time the city of Tampa took a direct hit from a major hurricane was all the way back in 1921. So that was the last direct hit from a hurricane in the city of Tampa, 1921. So let's take a look at the model plots. Every white line on this map indicates a different model plot, and it's a lot of information. So what we've done is we've clustered some of these models to get a consensus of what the overall picture is with the model runs. And we have two solutions, basically. We've got black lines that go to the north, and we have a cluster of black lines that go to the south. And these two clusters are the two schools of thought of what could happen with this storm. The lines that go to the south, those black lines, indicate a weaker storm, which would take it down to the south. A stronger storm, though, would track farther to the north, and that is represented by this cluster of models. Now notice, the black cluster of lines to the north is more in line with the forecast from the National Hurricane Center, where the center of the track goes pretty much right through Tampa Bay. Hopefully the storm trends weaker and maybe it goes farther south. Maybe it runs into some issues with wind shear or dry air, but right now the west coast of Florida and really the entire peninsula should be preparing for a direct impact from a major hurricane as we get to the middle of the week. Here's what's steering this, and this is a big factor for all of the other folks here along the Gulf Coast that are watching, thinking, is there a chance this thing takes a hard turn to the left and goes into Texas, Louisiana, the Panhandle, Alabama, or Mississippi? And the answer is no. And the reason for it is there's a big trough of low pressure in the upper atmosphere that'll be digging south in the form of a cold front. It is October after all, and that is going to deflect this system away from the northern and western Gulf states and essentially steer it out towards Florida as we get to the middle of the week. So here's a different view of that. Notice by Monday morning, again, this thing really ramping up as a strong Category 1 hurricane. But on the top of the screen, you see that blue line. That's the cold front that I was just talking about. As that starts to sag south, that really starts to influence this system. And again, it starts to push the storm farther off to the east and away from the northern Gulf states and the western Gulf. So here in southeast Texas, where I'm based in Houston, we're not expecting any impacts from this whatsoever. In fact, the weather here is going to be gorgeous with lower humidity behind this front. Unfortunately, a totally different story shaping up for the folks on the west coast of Florida. The wind field on this storm looks fairly large, but it doesn't look as big as what we just saw with Helene. So the impacts, I think, are really going to be pretty localized to where this storm happens. And I would say it's pretty much from the Tampa Bay area down to southwest Florida. Wind will likely be the worst around the area of landfall. But notice how all of the winds are going onshore along the southern side of the storm, because the storm spins counterclockwise. So we're pulling in all of this energy from the Gulf ahead of the storm's landfall. That energy comes in the form of wind, but also comes in the form of storm surge. Think about it. You've got wind moving over water, pushing in that same direction for hours and days on end. And so your storm surge begins to stack up along the west coast here. And so you could see storm surge values once this storm gets closer, if it verifies as that Cat 2 or 3 hurricane, on the order of 10 to maybe even 15 feet above sea level. So this is going to be a really significant impact, even for areas down the southwest Florida coast, maybe 100 miles away from Tampa. So a really impactful looking storm coming up here for the Florida coast. And on top of all of that, it's going to be a big rainmaker. We are going to see rain ahead of the storm's landfall. And then when the storm goes through itself, we could see easily 6 to 12 inches, with that swath likely going from Tampa through portions of north and central Florida. I think the rain totals will drop off a bit once you get to southeast Florida, but still a big rainmaker for the entire peninsula as we get into the upcoming week. So here's the bottom line. We're expecting hurricane strength with Milton by the time we get to Monday. Landfall is expected at this point in Florida sometime Wednesday, probably early afternoon. And unfortunately, as of the latest National Hurricane Center forecast, we are expecting a major Category 3 or greater landfall on Wednesday, again, in Florida. So a very fast evolving situation here. Just a few days ago, there was a lot of uncertainty whether or not something would actually develop in the Gulf. And now we've got something, and it looks like it is going to strengthen quickly on approach to Florida. So we are within that 72-hour window. If you live in Florida and you're watching this, or if you have family and friends that are in Florida, please let them know they've got to have their hurricane plans in place, ready to go quickly, and also have your evacuation plans in place. Know where you are going to go if you're given that evacuation order over the next 48 hours. A lot of moving pieces, a lot will change, and a lot of fine tuning with this forecast is still to come in the next day or two. Stay on top of this forecast as we get into the start of the upcoming week.